Before this video begins, I'd like to give a huge thanks to my channel members, who you can see on screen now. Become a member by hitting the join button and get your name here among other awards today. Hello there and welcome to a Need for Speed Heat. I wasn't expecting to make a video on this game, but I figured after playing it for about 10 hours it was worth a first impressions look at this game, so I could give you my thoughts, opinions and so on about this game, because there is a fair bit to discuss when it comes to Need for Speed Heat. So, a little bit of backstory with me and Need for Speed. Growing up, I used to love the Need for Speed series. Underground 1, Underground 2, Most Wanted, Carbon. They are all pretty fantastic games. I played a lot of them growing up. I really enjoyed them. I didn't really get into the earlier Need for Speeds. I never really played them when they were... Well, when I was a kid, I was too busy playing Gran Turismo 2 to bother with playing Need for Speed High Stakes and Hot Pursuit and all the rest of it. I never bothered with any of that. Need for Speed since Carbon, however, has been on a bit of a downward spiral. Pro Street was pretty good, for all it was worth. It was an interesting premise. I'm not quite sure if it was the correct time for Need for Speed to pull that off. And then sort of since then, it's kind of all gone down the drain. I'll be perfectly honest with you, I don't think there's been what I could call a great Need for Speed game in about 12 years. I wasn't a fan of the games when Black Box was sort of in their downward spiral, Undercover was lackluster. The Run was an interesting premise, but not executed particularly well. The Shift games, I never really bothered with those, although they were developed by my least favourite developer in the world, so I don't particularly want to have anything to do with those. And when it comes to the Criterion games, I really didn't like those. Hot Pursuit 2010 for me personally was fun for all of 2 hours, and then the Racer career was just awful in my honest opinion, and Most Wanted 2012 was an abomination, I'll be perfectly honest with you. So that's kind of up to date with Need for Speed, and ever since Ghost has taken it over, I didn't actually mind 2015 all that much. I got a fair amount of fun out of it. Admittedly, it was more just sort of not knowing was the fun part. Sort of after sort of thinking about it and playing the game a little bit more, yeah, it wasn't particularly great. And Payback, no. Really did not like Payback. It probably has the most unlikable characters I think I've ever seen in a video game. So, thoughts going into this one was not particularly high. Ghost, 2015, Payback were not particularly good. Oh, they did Rivals as well, which is so forgettable. I forgot about it. Which is essentially what happens when a Linkin Park song becomes a sentient video game, I guess. So, thoughts were not particularly high when it comes to Need for Speed Heat, but the game does have an interesting premise. The game does look like they were trying, but then again, it looks like Ghost has been trying for the last 4 or 5 years to create a good Need for Speed game. The question is, have they finally managed it on their 4th time out? And to be perfectly honest, to sort of cut a long story short, even though I just went on a rant about Need for Speed in general, yeah, this is a good game. They have finally produced a good piece of software. Is it great though? Well, that's the real question. Now, I must premise before I get into this, my first impressions currently are of the game on launch. This is sort of its launch week, if you will. A lot of the complaints I may have may or may not eventually be patched out. I hope quite a lot of them are, because, yeah, there is some general annoyances with this game which, to be honest with you, can break it, but that's just something to bear in mind. So, we're going to talk about the racing and also the main premise gimmick of the game. We're going to go into the customization, car list, all of that sort of good stuff, and then eventually I'll be able to give you sort of a final idea of what I think of the game up to now. Again, I've played roughly about 10 hours of it now. I haven't completed the story mode. I figured it would be best to sort of just pick this up halfway through, otherwise you can't really call it first impressions. It's more of a review, and I'm not really in a position to review anything. So, Need for Speed Heat. Here's the gimmick. Essentially, you have daytime races and nighttime races. Daytime races are sanctioned events. They're part of the Speed Hunters Showdown, I believe it's called, or something like that. I think sort of the Pro Street Festival, but nowhere near as cool, and that's essentially what that is. You also have night races. These are your sort of typical Need for Speed street racing events where you have to dodge police and other traffic cars, because of course it's unsanctioned street racing. There's pedestrians and, well, not pedestrians, but civilian cars and all sorts of stuff to avoid. So these daytime races, as you can see, they sort of have the barriers up and all the rest of it. I'll be really honest, I'm not a huge fan of the premise of the daytime racing. I don't really get the whole, like, it's supposed to be the Speed Hunters Festival, but yet when you sort of drive around the city, there's not really any idea of it being a festival. It would be cool if there was sort of more hallmarks, like it was Pro Street, like it felt like it was a big deal, like there was festivals, like the Horizon Festival, for example. When you drive around Forza Horizon, you know where you are. You're in a giant, living, breathing festival. This game doesn't really feel like that. It sort of feels like you're just driving around a city where you can't really be chased by the police unless you actually try to, like, ram them off the road. And you just sort of drive around there, and then all of a sudden you show up to a race and, wow, look, it's the festival. I think they could have nailed that a little bit better, I'll be honest. But the premise is the daytime racing, again, sanctioned races, you earn money. At nighttime, you earn reputation, which allows you to level up. So essentially, you've got to do the daytime races to get the money to buy parts, and you've got to do the nighttime racing to level up to unlock those parts and those cars and so on and so forth. I believe I am level 29 at the moment, although the leveling system's kind of weird, in the sense that sort of all levels don't really matter unless it's like sort of the main levels. So level 10, 14, 18, 20, 24 and 28 seem to be like the really big ones. That's when you unlock a load of cars in bulk, that's when you unlock a lot of upgrades in bulk, and of course the engine swaps, which we'll get to. I'm going to get to the customization at the end because I'm trying to get some money to buy a car so I can show you everything you can do to a car. Make sense? Good. So that is that. I guess while we are in this race, we should discuss car handling. Car handling in this game is interesting. It's, think Payback, but this game actually has a sense of speed, which is nice. That was always a jarring thing with Payback. The sense of speed was not really there. They have improved the handling from Payback, however, it does fall apart in some areas, I'll be honest. So, the actual overall sort of driving around is pretty good. They've got rid of brake to drift. You now essentially have to double tap the accelerator pedal to initiate a drift, but you can turn brake to drift on in the menus. I have turned brake to drift on because I don't really have an issue with brake to drift. I don't know why people get angry about it. I mean, Need for Speed games were never really known for their handling, let's be honest. Underground 1, 2, everything sort of handled like it had way too much weight behind it, and Most Wanted and Carbon used basically driving a brick. So yeah, Need for Speed games never really known for their handling. I actually thought the Criteria games were probably the best when it came to their handling, because essentially it was Burnout. But this isn't Burnout, this sort of is an amalgamation, I guess, of like Underground 1 and Burnout style handling. I guess that's the best way to explain it. Not really, because it doesn't really feel like either of those. Yeah, brake to drift is what I'd recommend, because the accelerator thing is stupid, and it essentially means you feel like you've got no throttle control on the car. Now, there are claims the best way to get around corners in this game is to actually grip to the road and deal with the understeer. It doesn't really feel all that fun if that's the way you decide to drive the cars, I'll be perfectly honest. So I just prefer to try and tap the brake and get them around the corners, because, yeah, otherwise the cars are sort of understeery messes, which isn't really all that much fun to drive like this. You know, I mean, it's fine, don't get me wrong, but not my cup of tea, I'll be honest. The starter car that you start off with, you get a choice of an E30, 180SX, and a Mustang. I chose the 180SX, and with the accelerated to drift stuff, I just couldn't really get along with it. Ever since then, I've kind of figured out where the brake to drift option is. It's in the live tuning menu, in case you're wondering. I'll show that off in a bit. So that is what I would recommend. I recommend just doing the brake to drift and just drive it like an arcade racer should be, and it's fine. Cars do handle differently depending on what you go for. This Polestar, of course, is all-wheel drive. I've driven some of the rear-wheel drive cars. I haven't driven a front-wheel drive car yet, which is surprising because it's me. But in truth, there hasn't really been a front-wheel drive car that seems particularly... what's the word I'm looking for? Particularly good overall. So I've decided to avoid them. So that's a race. You sort of saw that was just the standard circuit races. There is also drift events. Shall we go do a drift event, and then I can sort of talk about where the handling falls apart a bit. So, for actual just sort of on-circuit driving cars, it's fine. There are off-road races. I haven't dabbled with them yet. I have got a car built up for off-road races, but I'm sort of trying to unlock parts to put into that car because it's not particularly quite there yet when it comes to its performance index. You'll soon see what car it is and why I sort of really like the game and why I think its true potential is there, but I'll save that towards the end. So, the actual circuit driving and all the rest of it is fine. It's good, it's solid. It's, you know, it's better than Payback, it's definitely better than 2015. Probably the best handling Ghost game, that's not saying much. Probably the best handling Need for Speed game in a fair old while is probably quite accurate. To be honest with you, I mean, again, Need for Speed handling doesn't really matter. You don't really get a lot of feedback from the cars anyway, so yeah, when it comes to circuit driving, the game is a plus. Now, once we get to this drift race, I'm kind of going to show you where it falls apart a little bit, at least in my experience. Now, again, in my experience, this is just with the cars I've been able to accrue through my time playing the game, so it could be different depending on your desired playthrough. You know, if you decide to build something different, that might end up being really good at this sort of thing, but I'll be honest, the cars I've driven have not been so good at this sort of thing. And again, I can't really comment on dirt racing. I did a dirt race in a Subaru and it felt fine. It's sort of a Subaru the game gives you. So we're going to change car. We are going to get into the... where is it? Oh, everything's just a standard colour in here. That doesn't really make much sense. We'll get into this Alpha, because I've kind of built this up as a drift car. It used to be my race car, and then I got the Polestar, because I wanted the Polestar. And now I've tried to sort of turn this rear-wheel drive Alfa Romeo into a drift car, because that's what makes sense to me. Now, as you're about to see, this is the car which I've managed to have the most success with drifting, including the car the game gives you as sort of the benchmark drift car, because it gives you an RX-7 in like a little tutorial race. This is the car I found best for drifting, and as you're about to see, it's a bit of a mess. The drifting physics are not good, which is weird, because in Payback and all the rest of it, it was actually pretty okay. You know, sure, it was a bit unrealistic, but it was actually good. You know, you were fun, you were fluid, you had a lot of speed. In this, the drifting feels very snappy. The cars are either sort of oversteering and drifting as they should be, or they're going straight on, and there's no real in-between between having a giant angle and sort of easing into it. It's kind of hard to explain without driving it, but you can probably see sort of how fidgety this Alpha is. Admittedly, you don't really have to brake to drift in this, because it's a full drift setup car, which might be the issue, but again, this is the best I've had, and the game's attempt at coercing you into the drift mode with the RX-7, it didn't do as well as this at drifting. Drifting's of course point scored affairs. You don't have to do all that much drifting. I actually completed the drifting block of the game, sort of the drifting story mode with the guy they give you, without really realising. That's what that 350Z was for, by the way. We'll show that off when we get into the garage, because you do get exclusive cars for beating certain parts of the game and finding certain amounts of collectibles and so on and so forth. So that's where that 350Z came from. But yeah, this is the car I found the best. Again, it scores good points in this sort of thing, however, it's not fun to drive. You know, if you go back and watch some of my god-awful Need for Speed 2015 videos when I made a drift build on an MX-5, that was huge amounts of fun, because that car was just so effortless at drifting. And this is sort of just feels really rigid, and the car's either going round a corner sideways or it's just going round a corner understeering, and there's no real two ways about it. Not a fan of it, I've got to be honest, really not a fan of it. And I thought that was like the one strength Payback had, because in Payback the drifting was pretty good as well. You know, you could get about 500,000 points on one track without it feeling sort of awkward. This just feels awkward. Again, I have not tried my usual drift cars, mainly because the performance index is a bit screwy, in my opinion. But again, I'll show that off when I customise the cars, leaving you on a bit of a stench there, although I'm sure some of you probably just skipped forward to that. you know, I haven't driven stuff like my MX-5, which is usually my go-to drift car for these games, or like an F-Type, but you'd figure the Alpha would be a pretty good sort of consistent, nice driving car. I mean, in real life, it's an excellent handling Italian sports saloon, so... But, yeah, it's just not great, which is a bit of a shame. Again, easy to beat the points with, fine, but it just doesn't feel natural, and this car's supposedly all drift, and it really does not feel particularly good for the drifting. So, yeah, bit of a bust on that one, I'm afraid, but, you know, it is what it is. This is kind of the loose part of the game, in my opinion. It's the worst part of it. Other than, well, one other thing, but that's more frustration. We'll get to that, don't worry. So, yeah, there's your drift trials. That's what you do. You drift, you get points. It's Need for Speed. Apparently, I'm moving slightly. That's odd. Also, not too much money for that drift event, apparently, even though I, like, completely obliterated it. Money depends on which events you go for, of course. It seems a bit random. Some events give you, like, 40,000 credits. Other events just give you no money whatsoever, so that's a bit of a shame. Alright, let's enter the garage, and we will transition from daytime into nighttime. Another game mode worth mentioning is the... let's just see if we can swap straight to the Polestar. There it is. Right, cool. Let's go back into that, and then we will go into night. So every time you press the B button, you end up in this menu, which, I'll be perfectly honest, is fucking irritating at times. When you're just trying to move around the garage, and all of a sudden that graphic comes up, but it is what it is. So, yeah. That is what I was on about, I can't remember. There's also sort of autocross style events called time trials, where it puts you on tight technical courses. Some of these are really, really interesting. There's one with loads of S-bends. There's one that literally tasks you with driving on sort of a portion of the above city train, which is really cool. There's sort of all sorts of little fun stuff like that when it comes to those, and they are huge amounts of fun. It's really interesting to see the creativity in those. However, I gotta be honest, in a game like Need for Speed, precision handling isn't really a part of the game particularly, so they aren't quite as much fun as maybe they could be if they were, you know, in a game with slightly better handling, with the sort of weird, you know, of course, with these games, the brakes aren't particularly good, because the whole point is you're supposed to slide the cars around the corner and all the rest of it. Trying to do sort of a tight technical run around an L train doesn't really work all that well. So those are fun, certainly, and they're quite easy to earn a lot of money on. You do get bonuses in those, depending on how well you do, which is good, but overall, they can feel a little bit janky, but they're fun, they're quick, I really like them, and again, it's nice to see a little bit of Ghost's creativity when it comes to those tracks, and again, in almost any other game, it'd be really fun. The problem is, in an arcade game like this, precision driving just isn't something that you can really perform. So, as I mentioned, we're going into the night mode now. This is where you get to see all the illegal street racing, and this is how you earn your reputation to sort of level up and unlock parts. Now, I am going to ignore the issue that presents, where why do you gain sort of notoriety and reputation in the underground racing instead of doing it at the daytime when there's more eyes on you, surely because people come to watch this festival? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense if you think about it too much, but we'll try and ignore it. So, as you can see, street racing, the barriers are gone in place of sort of this vaporwave style barrier. Again, Need for Speed Vaporwave is kind of an accurate way to describe the aesthetics of this game, so that is something. Also, the cops are slightly off sync with the mini-map, so yeah, there's also police officers that can show up in this race, and I've got to be honest, this is where the police are at their best when you're in a race, because they kind of get distracted by other cars and stuff, which is good. It keeps the heat off you slightly, it makes it a little bit more fun, a little bit more interesting, and doesn't make them the complete broken mess they are currently in free roam. We'll get to that. Or if we do, I don't know. I don't know if the cops are really going to bother with us. So, essentially, the reputation system works a lot like that in Need for Speed Rivals, if you remember that game, where essentially the whole premise of that game is you drove the... Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. The premise of that game was when you played in the racer portion of the game, you would sort of get cops on you, you'd get a heat level, and so on and so forth, and you'd earn reputation by doing races and little things here and there, and as you earned heat level, as you sort of the cops got more aggressive, your multiplier would increase to your reputation, and that's sort of what happens here. There's 5 heat levels, and you get a reputation boost if you manage to, sort of the more cops you manage to irritate, but to earn more reputation you have to, or to earn a lot more reputation, you have to go into the actual races themselves and, you know, win and so on and so forth. So that's an interesting little thing. This Diablo is apparently just, or sorry, Countach is just disappearing because Vaporwave car, but that's essentially how it works. You earn a little multiplier. I think you get a multiplier to your heat level at the end of races sometimes, I've noticed. It's not massively consistent, but it is a thing that can happen. And, you know, so much in the same way that in the daylight you can see how much money you can earn from races, in nighttime you see how much rep you earn. You do earn a little bit of money for these races. You can earn quite a lot of money at night, actually. I'm sort of finding out, but again, the wheres and whys of earning that money, I'm not too sure. It seemed a little bit weird, a little bit random. You can earn rep in a few other different ways. You don't have to do the races at night. You can go through speed traps and stuff, but generally the quickest way to earn rep at night is via the street races, as you expect. And of course there's no sort of afterwards cutscene because you could be getting chased by cops or something. So from that race we earned 14,000 rep, and yeah, that's how that works. There's also these high heat races, so when you get to level 3 heat, these races unlock where the rewards are higher. In theory, the cops should chase you more in those races, but they don't really seem to. They sort of chase you for like the first 10 seconds and then don't for the next bit. You can sort of see one of those high heat races there, waiting for this cop to initiate the chase so we can get a little bit higher heat. Come on. The Crown Vics are by far and away the most fun cars to be in a pursuit with, because everything sort of after the Crown Vics gets a little bit stupid. Hello Dodge Charger, proving my point. The police in this game, they are a huge step up from 2015. They're a huge step up from Payback, all the rest of it, wonderful, great. They are too much in this game, and the game pretty much actively wants you to hate them, I think, by just irritating you. So, heat level 1 is fine. You get Crown Victorias, they're fine. They top out about 150, and you can escape them fairly easy. Of course, as you go on, your ability to escape should get looser. The problem is, at level 2, the Dodge Chargers show up. The Dodge Charger is the most broken car in this game. The Dodge Charger police car, I mean, quite frankly, it makes the Bugatti Veyron look like a fucking caterpillar. It can accelerate from 0 to what, 200 miles an hour in apparently 2 seconds. The catch-up on the cop cars is ridiculous, and the problem with the Charger is it has a lot of armour. After the Chargers comes the Corvettes, which are fine. They're weaker, because they're a lot quicker, as you'd expect. Again, the problem is, the Chargers can out-drag the fucking Corvettes. So, you have the Crown Victoria, which is supposed to be the sort of, don't worry about it too much police car, which is fine. But the Charger, which is supposed to be the intermittent one between the Corvette and the Crown Vic, just completely destroys you. There's nothing you can do. Apparently that's a heat level 5 race. I don't want to get to heat level 5. Very bad things happen when you get to heat level 5. We will go ahead and try and make our way over there though and do that one. And it's just sort of after heat level 3, you're fucked, because the Chargers show up, the Chargers can beat the Corvettes. The Corvettes can catch you ridiculously quickly. I say the Chargers and the Corvette have the same pace. They're not exactly. And then sort of more weird things happen at Heat Level 3. There is apparently pursuit tech in this game, so they can strike your car, I'm assuming turn EMP you and stuff. I haven't really got them to have a lock on that, but it seems to work very similar to the way pursuit tech worked in previous Ghost Need for Speed games, as you'd sort of expect. So yeah, also you can just sort of do that and kill them immediately and not have to deal with them. The other problem that comes in the pursuit things, again, there is nothing wrong with the cops being hard. The problem is the game actively just tries to fuck you when it comes to the cops. So, as you'll notice, on sort of the left of the gauge cluster, there is a image with a spanner and a wrench. Shouldn't be too hard for you to figure out what that is. That's of course a damage meter. Now, damage meters have been in Need for Speed past, they were in Rivals, I think, as well. And of course, once that meter hits 0, your car runs out of health and you get busted. Which is fine. I know some reviewers have complained about this. They'd rather just have it like the old Need for Speed, where nothing really stopped you other than spike strips and getting boxed in. I can understand why that damage meter is there. They want to add a little bit more intensity to the cop battles. Now, you can repair your car, which is great. You can repair it at petrol stations, as you'll see in a second. I'm going to drive through a petrol station right now, and that damage meter is going to reset back to 0. Lovely. The problem is there. You'll notice there's not an infinite amount of repairs. You can only repair yourself 3 times a night. That's an issue. And that essentially means once you get past about Heat Level 3, you're just fucked. Because you've got the Chargers that can just accelerate instantly and destroy your car in like 4 hits, and you can't repair your car. The only way to get rid of the police is to, well, lose them, which is difficult when they can literally just accelerate up to whatever speed your car's doing in a click of a finger. And you essentially have to duck into the safe houses to end the night. It's a little bit... it's just broken. Yeah, it really is. It makes the pursuits not fun. I get you want to make them intense. I get you want to make them challenging. I get all of that, trust me. But unnecessary challenge is just not good. There are also, I should mention, the pursuit text things. I think you can install them to the cars. There is an option for it in the garage, so I'm assuming that's something you unlock later on. But yeah, it's just not fun to be in these high-speed police chases. In Need for Speed Most Wanted, in Carbon, and all the rest of it, there was a real fun urge of getting to level 5 police chases, you know, smashing through roadblocks and all the rest of it. I can get you don't want to have people literally just demolishing the police car, smashing through roadblocks and stuff. I get you want to have them sort of lose them in an organic way, you know, lose the heat like you would in real life, by essentially outrunning them by ducking into alleys and stuff. But again, the problem is you can't do it because the cops have just got so much catch-up. I've had moments where I've been driving towards a building, I've turned right at the last moment while the cop is in front of me, and he will essentially just be right back on me again within 3 seconds. It's ridiculous. It's just utterly unplayable. And again, Heat Level 5, I'm not sat there going, oh, this is really intense, this is really fun. I'm like, I just want to go away, please. You know, I actually have to essentially use a slight glitch spot towards the top of the map, where essentially there's like a long jump which they don't follow you over, and a safe house right nearby, and there's also like a little thing where you can hide from helicopters. And that's essentially the only way to escape a Heat Level 5 chase. I've done it once. Again, I get you want to make it an achievement for people to escape level 5 chases. Wonderful, great. But I didn't feel a sense of pride and accomplishment from that. I was just like, thank fuck that's over. It's just not good in that method, and the police really are the big issue. Honestly, if you ask me, 2 things that need to happen to really make Need for Speed Heat fun when it comes to police chases: you need to tone them the fuck down. You need to tone down the catch-up. You probably need to tone down the amount of damage they inflict as well. Again, the charger can just annihilate you in 4 hits, essentially, and when you ram them back, that also causes damage to your car, so there's not really anything you can do when it comes to a straight line. They also need to make it so you can get unlimited repairs, or at least make it more than 3, because 3 is just ridiculous. Again, it literally means essentially police chases can only last a couple of minutes. They don't go for a long time. I get the whole point of the game is like, oh, they're stepping up their police presence, they're going to make them a lot more difficult, street racers beware. But I like having marathon chases, you know. Cop chases IRL don't last 5 minutes unless you're a complete moron. But then again, I mean, cop cars in real life also aren't like Dodge Chargers with the engines of fucking Koenigsegg Regeras, so yeah, that's sort of my ranty little portion over. Other than the police, which again, sort of main selling point of the game, so it's hardly like that's a small issue really. Here's a Charger, who's also apparently a precision driver, so he can just drive through everything, which is fine. Yeah. Other than the police issue, the actual AI in general are fine. There's not really the ridiculous amount of Need for Speed catch-up issue, which is normal for these games, so that's good. Hopefully there's a fucking safe house near here so I can bank all this rep. There's a petrol station down there. I think the nearest house is a while away though. There's like 13 safe houses. Thankfully you don't have to just get to like one set safe house, there is several across the map, so. And the map's actually quite large as well, although slightly lifeless, I'll be honest. There's sort of the main city area and then nothing else really matters beyond that, so that's kind of an issue. So let's just see if we can creep back to this house without being seen. So that's the cops. They're irritating in essence. Level 1 heat is fun. Every other heat other than that is just bollocks. I'll be perfectly honest, it's just bollocks. Also, they have a tendency, you might see it now, they have a tendency to just... Ooh, there's a safe house there. Ooh. They also have a tendency to just spawn in front of you, which is fucking annoying when that happens. So, yeah, they're a little bit janky, a little bit broken. Probably needs to fix, but that's the cops. That's the nighttime portion of the game. And again, to bank all the rep, enter the garage, and there we go. Also, I should point out, if you wreck the car, then you do end up getting caught by the police as well. Sometimes it resets you, sometimes it just ends the pursuit. It's weird. Sometimes the best method of evading pursuit is to actually just dump your car in the water and none of the police respawn. That's something I've seen, although that's not massively reliable as a thing. So, hey, we apparently got a bunch of new stuff for the car. So, yeah, I won't customize the Polestar. As you can see, it's already been slightly customized. What instead we're going to do is we're going to go build a car, and then, or buy a car, and then I'll build it, and then we'll end up, and I'll give you final thoughts. Although it should be fairly clear what I think of the game. I think I might have ranted a bit too much. While we do go get a car, I guess we should talk about graphics. This is running on a standard Xbox One, as you'd expect from me, because I'm not paying for an Xbox One X. And again, I'm not going to play PC or anything like that. The game looks good at points, terrible at others. It really is a mixed bag. So, like, now, for example, it looks fine. There's a bit of a film grain going on, but that's been there since, like, Need for Speed 2015. But some effects in the game, like the rain on the roads, looks really pretty. It looks good. The rain bouncing off the cars and the character models, however, doesn't. There's like literal white spots that appear all over the car in like a heavy rainstorm, which is supposed to simulate like little puddles and stuff. It doesn't really work, I'll be honest. So graphically, it can be a little bit underwhelming at times. But you know, it is what it is. So, car list. I guess this is one thing we should speak about. The car list in this game is fantastic. As you can see there, 127 vehicles. Not all of them are unique, but a vast majority of them are. There's quite a few sort of convertibles and stuff. And the car list is just excellent. It really is. There is a great variety of stuff. There's trucks, there's off-road vehicles, muscle cars, 90s JDM cars, modern JDM cars, modern supercars. There is just a huge assortment of automobiles for you to collect and customize. A lot of these cars have good customization, and a lot of cars that you would not expect to have good customization. Like this DB5, for example, has a 10 out of 10. There is tons of parts for the Aston Martin DB5. You know, a lot of them are made for the game, as you'd expect, but there's just a huge variety of vehicles here. Of course, there are some noticeable absences. Toyota, obviously. Also, something I find hilarious is the fact there is not the brand new Porsche 911 in this game. There's only 991 generations of 911, which I find slightly amusing considering EA's previous dealings with Porsche. So, I kind of want to buy a car that wasn't in the previous games. Although a lot of these are, there's not really a huge amount of new cars for Payback. For Heat. Other than the Subaru. The Subaru's new, although you can't really do a whole lot to the Subaru. I'll be perfectly honest. What should we buy? Can't remember if the Evo 10 was in the previous games or not. I know it wasn't in 2015. So I might buy the Evo just to show that off. Of course, the MX-5 is usually what I'd go for. I don't know if I really want to go with the MX-5. The Firebird's got 10 out of 10 customization as well. The Firebird is hilarious. I'll show that off in a bit because I've bought quite a few of the silly cars. Sod it, we'll buy the Evo 10 and we'll have a sort of look at that because I don't remember this car being in previous games. I could be wrong. It could have been in Payback and I don't remember it, but it'll do for now. Right, so let us go over to a garage and we will start fettling with our Evo 10. So, if you've played the previous Ghost Need for Speed games, the upgrade system should be pretty familiar, or at least the parts performing system. The upgrade system, thankfully, is not the same as Payback. There's none of that awful... There is none of that awful sort of Wheel of Fortune stuff going on. So, a lot of the cars have a lot of customization. There's no option for the wide bodies anymore. That gets sort of performed as you go on. But as you can see, there is a decent amount of stuff. I actually kind of like that. That looks kind of cool. Yeah, there's sort of these little buttons all over the car. You click on them and you can select different things. That is one hell of a splitter. I like the one hell of a splitter. And thankfully, the visual customization doesn't cost very much. So, much like in Payback, sort of the most fun I got in Payback was performing a bunch of silly upgrades to the cars, and that sort of seems to be a thing you can do in this game. The actual buying of the cars isn't massively expensive, although you do have to save up a little bit for certain vehicles, but the sort of amount you can do, all the customization stuff's pretty cheap. Well, I guess we'll go with that. I'm just going to end up going with this full SAFA kit. But there's, apart from maybe that rear arch, I'm not a huge fan of those style rear arches, but I guess it's fine for this. But yeah, there's a huge amount you can do to the vehicles of this game, as you'd expect. I actually kind of like the Speed Hunters. So that's like a part set, which has the rear bumper and exhaust. I assume that's from like a higher tier Evo. Maybe these guys have a splitter. Yeah, there's sort of splitters and... yeah, that sort of remodels the rear end for that. So can we like do that and then have... I actually kind of like that. Sure. It looks a bit base model-y, but it's fine. But yeah, there's a huge amount you can do. Pretty much anything you realistically could have wanted to do to a car you can do. You can even do untasteful things like Shackleton exhaust, if that's the way you get off. I mean, you know, I'm not going to judge you. I'm just going to say that's not the way you're supposed to do it. Let's go with the giant-ass fart cans on the back of this. But yeah, if you can change it on a real life car, chances are you can probably change it in this, so it's kind of cool. There's a wing. There is some excessive wings in this game. I might go with that just to... or that. I don't know. I kind of like the Vortex one though. It's a little bit toned down, but it looks neat. Oh, louvers, yes, fantastic. So, yeah, that's interesting. Kind of makes the car look a bit more Japanesey, Chinesey. Sorry, kind of like that. But yeah, it's Need for Speed, or modern Need for Speed. It's all up on those modern tuner trends that all the kids like. Which, you know, I mean, time is sort of passing me by quite a bit when it comes to some of this stuff. Some of it does look quite stupid, but, you know, is what it is. Again, front wheel, rear wheels, you can make them two different things if you want. I've never really understood why you'd want to make the front wheel and the rear wheel not match. Sure, I guess it gives it that drifting tuner look. I like the BBSs. Some of the details on the parts is really good. You know, even if the actual overall car details sometimes can be a little bit lacking, or environment detail more specifically, you know, some of the details on these parts is pretty cool. And again, you can, of course, as you could in the previous Need for Speed, you can change your tyres, change the brake discs, whatever. This comes with Brembos as standard, which are a thing. And of course, you know, you can stancify your cars, you can make them look broken if that's something that you're into. I'm not. Effects, tyre smokes, nitrous colour, all this has come over from Payback. And of course, is the wrapping system, which, I'll be perfectly honest, is probably the best wrapping system we have seen in a modern video game. You know, you can put decals anywhere you want on the cars. You can... There we go. I thought the game had crashed for a second there, as it is liable to do occasionally. But yeah, it's got a good storefront. You can do a lot of things. I really like the ability to place decals on the windows and all the rest of it. You can do pretty much whatever you want to the cars in terms of decals, which, again, I really like. I do think Need for Speed probably does the whole... decal editor better than anyone else. I know some people prefer the Gran Turismo method, which I think's fine. Personally, I find it a little bit awkward to deal with, but I know some people like it. That does not look bad, ironically enough. So yeah, that's the customization. You can even change the exhaust sound of the car, which is pretty cool. I can't hear any of this. Usually I just set it all the way to this end because I'm a yobbo. So, that's something you can do. In terms of the performance customization, this has got an overhaul as well. The key big difference here this time is engine swaps. You can engine swap a lot of cars in this. Well, almost every car has engine swaps. At least every car I've come across has had them. And, I mean, there's an Alfa Giulia engine in a Evo. You can do silly stuff like that. And of course, this system from the previous Ghost games has also appeared. Each different part of your car is customizable. There's gearbox tuning this time, so no silly random inheriting of 9-speed transmissions. You actually put those in. I'll be really honest, I think the parts are a bit too expensive. I mean, you know, an Elite exhaust, 23.5 grand, ups your car 21 performance points. Realistically, you'd probably be better off just saving up for a better car, which is what I've done. That's why I have the Pulse. That's why there's a lot of cars in the background, just because instead of upgrading my current car and sort of unlocking the parts through leveling up, I may as well just go ahead and buy the actual performance part up. Yeah, parts are expensive in this game, but it is what it is. So I'll show you sort of an engine swap thing I have made. Here is an off-roading Aston Martin DB5 with a rotary engine in it. The game has crashed and it's excellent, I think. That's another issue. I'm actually quite pleased that has done that, because this is an issue with the game. It's very unstable. It is very unstable in my experience. It's crashed about 4 or 5 times on me, and it's even done it in the middle of races. It's not often just as nice as that, so we'll get back into the game and I'll keep talking. So yes, anyways, back to it. Yeah. there's a rotary DB5 off-road car that spits flames. Again, I'm trying to sort of level this up before I do anything with it, but you can do an insane amount to a lot of the cars in this game, and a lot of it looks ridiculous, and I love it. So that is Need for Speed Heat in a nutshell. Also, here's some of the stuff I've created. Apparently, I've got 8 cars now. Yeah, I was quite impressed with most of the customization on all these, especially the Burt Reynolds amazing car. The Impreza was a little bit sad because essentially the game basically tries to get you to use one of the wide bodies, which basically selects everything, which I don't particularly like, and all the wide body kits don't match up with some of the other parts I'd rather use, which is a bit of a shame. But you know, that car aside, I've been generally impressed with the customization. I haven't really bought any of the 2 free customization spec cars, because in these Need for Speed games, or in the Ghost games, and pretty much any game in general, I'd much rather upgrade one of the earlier cars than trying to ignore all this. This is story stuff. Yeah, I'd much rather just sort of buy a car and level it up to the end of the game, something that's like highly customizable and stuff. That's one of the things I really liked about 2015, is you could essentially just bring a Volkswagen Golf to the end of the game with you instead of buying like a Lamborghini or something. But this game, in the same way as Payback, sort of entices you to upgrade your car constantly. I'm kind of hoping this Polestar can reach the end of the game though, because as much as stuff like the Performante and stuff is nice, I don't really care about the supercars that you can't do anything to, because this is a Need for Speed game and I'm all about that customization. But yeah, customization is excellent. So, the only other thing to really mention about Need for Speed Heat before we go away is over this open world map they've littered it with challenges. There's stuff like speed traps, think PR stunts from Horizon, and you'll be pretty much there. There's those. There's speed traps, jumps, flamingos, which you smash into and get money for, and as you complete those you get exclusive cars. I've seen on the 370Z Nismo, there is a couple of sort of Need for Speed legacy cars, because of course this is a Need for Speed game, so it needs to ride off the legacy that it had several years ago when it was really good. But yeah, overall, I'm kind of enjoying Need for Speed Heat. The early game is a bit trash. I will be perfectly honest, when it locks you into one of those starter cars which you don't really want. The police chases feel absolutely brutal. They still feel brutal now, and I'm like 10 hours in. And yeah, the early game might turn you off a little bit. Fail Race has a bit more of an in-depth discussion on that one if you want to go check out his video on that. But overall, it is a much, much, much better game than any of the previous Ghost offerings. It is better than 2015. It is a lot better than Payback. Story mode, I won't spoil it too much. It's relatively interesting. The characters aren't massively likeable. It's essentially just a bunch of millennials screaming about being millennials, and then also getting involved with the police, but that's kind of what you'd expected. They are nowhere near as hateable as the characters from Need for Speed Payback, which were some of the most atrociously written characters I think I've ever experienced in a video game. So that's better. But other than that, that is it for Need for Speed Heat. I enjoy it. I think it's good. I would recommend if you are at all interested in it. The problem is, usually I'd suggest playing the trial version, which is a great thing on the EA Access idea. You know, you can go ahead and play a trial version. The problem is the trial version locks you into the early game, and the early game is a little bit disappointing. So I would suggest, if you're at all interested in this game, if you don't know whether you're going to like it or not, wait for it to go on sale. If it seems like your sort of thing, and you were only sort of reserved on a few things like the handling and I don't know what else, you know, maybe wanting to rip your ears out because the characters are as bad as Payback, you don't have to worry about that. So maybe just go ahead and buy it. But yeah, it's a fun old game, certainly. And best Ghost NFS, probably the best NFS game in 12 years easily. It might even be better than Pro Street at the end of it, in my opinion, because Pro Street wasn't all that great. Is it as good as Underground, Carbon, all the stuff you remember? Probably not, but you know, nostalgia is a hell of a drug, and also Underground 2 is just a terrific, excellent game that can kick the arse out of pretty much anything in the racing game genre. So that is it for Need for Speed Heat. Thank you all very much for watching. If you've got any queries about the game, I will be quite happy to answer them. If you've got any ideas for videos you want to see on this game, don't know why you would, but if you have, if there's something you want to see, a particular car you want to see showcased, I guess I could do a build on it, although, again, my favourite thing about the game is building the cars. The actual driving of them is fine, but nothing spectacular, so, yeah. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, farewell.